shooting of people inside the concert hall. We have the taking of 60 to 100 hostages. We have hostages escaping over the last hour, telling stories to reporters there of what they saw inside of young men without masks on, pump action shotguns firing into the crowd, bodies all over the place, people on the second floor reporting of what it was like, talking of their injuries and seeing the dead all around. So that's 3 locations, but there are more. The French news agency, Agence France Presse, AFP, is now reporting there are 7 separate locations where attacks are underway or have been underway over the past 2 hours. We have from police and the French president notice of 3, but from the French news agency, the official news agency of France, 7 separate terror attack locations across the city of Paris. The French military has been dispatched across the city and now the nation. The borders have been closed. The cabinet meeting is either ongoing now or was most recently, and we expect to hear from the French president yet again. They've asked all citizens of Paris and beyond to shelter in place, to go to places of safety as the military sweeps the streets and tries to regain order. And at the same time, a terror attack underway at this moment inside the concert hall where 60 to 100 people were being held. We've just gotten a dispatch from New York City, where the mayor, Bill de Blasio, has just spoken with our network news service affiliate, WABC Television, ABC 7 here in New York, that New York is now on high alert, that it has been since this began. The New York City mayor says it is on constant alert already for any potential attacks. It would make nothing but sense that large cities across the world would now be on heightened alert, and they are. We've just gotten word from Paris that all schools and university in the Paris region will be closed on Saturday. The nation is in mourning, the military out to enforce the rule of law, and terrorists now attacking inside the concert hall, just out of view of media cameras. Sky News reporting live, and I'm just getting word now that AFP has a security source that says police are storming the concert hall now, which matches with word that we've gotten from independents on scene. First the explosions, then the police storming the concert hall. After reports came on social media and beyond, think of what the authorities are dealing with. They're getting the reports, as I just read, from social media. Social media people inside reporting that, for instance, posted on Facebook, "I'm at Bataclan on the first floor, hurt. There are survivors." Quote, "They are cutting down all the world one by one, first floor soon." If I'm reading it, police are reading it. So they know from the Facebook post of someone inside that building that as he wrote, terrorists were murdering others inside the building. Police had to figure out how to act. Suddenly, another post came out, and a number of hostages came out of the building. Were they released? We certainly don't believe so. But some with blood on them began telling the stories of what was happening inside that building. And then within minutes, not 1 but 5 explosions. And at that time, police moved in. Police moved in at that time, and they have now stormed the Bataclan, the concert hall where all of this happened, and live pictures coming into us, and some on tape from Sky News at this moment, as we've been watching throughout the evening. And now we know that this was not a one-time attack. There were multiple attacks simultaneously, and now a continuing attack inside this building where 60 to 100 are held hostage. ISIS-linked, ISIS-friendly accounts are celebrating this attack on Paris online. Again, repeating, ISIS-linked and ISIS-friendly accounts are celebrating the attacks on Paris. Not a claim of responsibility, as our Catherine Herod said, but a celebration. Charlie Hebdo, ISIS also celebrated those attacks, but it was ultimately attributed, remember, to AQAP, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is more commonly Al-Qaeda in Yemen. Paris has been struck, by whom we do not know, but by every account, it is as coordinated, large, and widespread an attack as we have ever witnessed. I've just gotten word that in Paris, they have just instituted a mandatory curfew, the first mandatory curfew since 1944. In the height of World War II, a curfew in Paris, the military on the streets, at least 60 people dead, and by every account, more are dying as I speak, as gunmen have shot and exploded inside that concert hall, and police have stormed it in an attempt to regain control. And at the same time, the French press agency reporting that outside of this concert hall, outside of the stadium and the cafe and the nightclub, outside of all of that, are at least 6 more locations where attacks have taken place tonight. Unprecedented in world history in my lifetime. We will know soon enough from authorities what exactly happened inside that concert hall. We'll know in due time how many have died. But we know at this moment that the world as we know it has changed tonight. For terrorists from far away did not cross an ocean with planes that they hijacked and have a one-time experience that changed everything we know. In this case, there is a series of coordinated attacks that happened and continues to happen. And actions unprecedented in modern history are taking place in Paris tonight. A midnight meeting of the cabinet, a series of explosions, the gunning down of young people, the shutting of the borders, the mandatory curfew, the military on the streets, and unknown hours ahead. I'm just getting word now from one of our information specialists of another first-hand report, and quoting now, this is a Bataclan witness, a person inside that theater who escaped and spoke to journalists on scene whom we trust. And I'll read it as given to me. It was carnage, said Mark Copris, who's 57, still shaking after being freed from the hostage taking at Bataclan concert venue. Quoting, it looked like a battlefield. There was blood everywhere. There were bodies everywhere. I was at the far side of the hall when the shooting began. There seemed to be at least 2 gunmen. They shot from the balcony. Everyone scrambled to the ground. I was on the ground with a man on top of me and another one beside me up against a wall. We just stayed still like that. At first we kept quiet. I don't know how long we stayed like that. It seemed like an eternity. I saw my last final unfurl before me. I thought it was the end. I thought, I'm finished. I was terrified. We must all have thought the same. Eventually, when a few guards came in slowly, we began to look up, and there was blood absolutely everywhere. The police told us to run. From Liberation, the newspaper, automatic gunfire and huge explosions heard inside Bataclan Concert Hall. We're getting multiple reports from everywhere. From the BBC, it was a suicide bombing at the French media reporting. It would be a first on French soil. The authorities have moved into that bombed out and shot up concert hall, the Bataclan. No one has come out with the reports of what has happened since that firsthand one I just read you. But we know with 5 explosions and some 60 to 100 people held there, the news will not be good. And that at some point we'll hear about the veracity of the other reports tonight, about whether the French news agency, which is very careful with its facts related to the state and the official source for France of news, will learn where the agency French press is correct when it says there are 6 other locations where this carnage has taken place tonight. The official death toll is 40 and the official wounded is 60. They are not updating us at this hour. There's time ahead for that. Let's cross over to Sky News where they're reporting with witnesses on the ground. Listen.
It was all very much, I think the first reports were in a restaurant in the 10th hour, a Cambodian restaurant, which I know well. And there are at least 15 people reported dead there, 5 seriously injured. And then the next was the Bataclan. And it quickly became clear, first of all, that this was a terrorist attack because people were heard shouting, "This is for Syria," and there was apparently some kind of standoff with police. Then they got inside this packed concert hall, and they, according to some eyewitnesses, started opening fire on the crowd. There was a panic. Some managed to escape. Clearly, if the security forces have launched an assault this quickly, they fear there's a bloodbath going on, as far as I would imagine, and that there's no point in hanging around. And President Hollande did actually say during his televised arrest that an assault was underway.
Henry, we'll just play the pictures that we received from that location now. Let's play them in again.
Je peux que retransmettre la ligne des polices civiles. Est-ce que vous avez tous entendu?
Well, those were the sounds of those explosions and gunfire we heard earlier, Henry, with indicating, as you say, that came just after François Hollande had said that an operation would be underway. I guess the thinking has to be, if they were prepared to launch what we understand to be a suicide attack near Stade de France, it alters the thinking, the way that you approach these people.
Well, yeah, I mean, the French police now, literally everyone, there's a state of emergency. Everyone in Paris has been told to go indoors. Everything is shut down. And if you're out on the street, there's a risk that you could be shot by a policeman. They're that worried that people are just going to start opening fire or blowing themselves up. And there are some unconfirmed reports that then there are other attacks underway in Rue de Temple, which is near République. And I have heard an eyewitness talking about one, as I say, near Bastille, in Rue de Charonne, which is another restaurant. So clearly the situation is far from under control. All the gunmen are at large. It's an ongoing situation.
What can you see there at the moment?
Shepard Smith in New York now. An update has just come to us. Figaro and Le Monde are reporting that the police assault on Bataclan Theater is now underway, quoting police central headquarters. Hostages remain inside the building. Now, you're not seeing pictures of this because French television are not showing the storming of the theater due to security reasons. Here is the thinking. If we put live pictures of police storming that theater, and these terrorists have someone outside of that theater who may have some sort of remote control device that there is no way to know the larger coordination of this. And the French authorities and French television are erring on the side of caution. But here is the word that we're getting from witnesses on scene. Authorities are outside. It's cordoned off. They're trying to regain control at Bataclan with more than 100 people, we're now told, held hostage inside, and the people inside murdering one survivor after another. At some point, as police were working on a way to storm this place, explosions began to happen, one after another after another. Either 5 or 6, we can't know for sure, but multiple explosions. Not the kind of explosion that would level the building, far from it, but individual explosions within the building.
Not one person.
Some people remain alive inside, and they are now. It's the reporting within the last minute or two that there are still hostages inside this building who are alive. We don't know the status of the gunmen. Are they still lording over these people? Are there others besides the 2 about whom we have knowledge? We don't know. We have just been told that one person was arrested at Bataclan. That the arrest happened, this is at Bataclan, correct? At one of the attack sites. It is unclear to us at this moment, but this is coming to us from French police. We have just gotten word that one arrest has taken place, and the person who was arrested told the French authorities, "I am from ISIS." We have no way to know whether that person is telling the truth or not. Is it possible that this is a sympathizer? Is it possible that this is someone who is upset with the situation in Paris and Europe in general, with the refugees coming from Syria and beyond? Remember, one reportedly screened, this is for Syria. Is it possible that he is an ISIS sympathizer? Certainly. Is it possible that what he said was true on the surface, that he is from ISIS, that ISIS dispatched him, that whatever ISIS command and control might be, sent this man and potentially others to do these deeds tonight? That is also possible. But for the moment, the news that is breaking is the 5 explosions have happened in the last 5 to 10 minutes. The authorities have stormed into the building. We are told there are more survivors on the second series of attacks. First, the gunman in the middle of the concert, people coming out, the first wave, remember? The witnesses saying,
I hope I got a lot of RAM, because this ain't over. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and this is what I've been warning about for a long time.
but we know the authorities went in after these explosions, and we know that they are now trying to regain control. There are journalists on scene at this moment reporting these things to us. We are not showing live pictures for reasons just described, and we will not unless and until we're sure it's not something that will make things worse. Not as much about the Fox News channel in the United States, though watched around the world, more about the French television cameras, which would bring these pictures to us. We know this is ongoing. Authorities are not commenting on reports from news organization after news organizations, ones respected around the world, which say there are 6 other locations of attacks tonight. We will not belabor the point because it does not serve anyone except to say scores of people have been injured and killed tonight, and that this is still underway. Live reporting from Sky News now as we look at pictures in and out. This is tape again because we're not showing live pictures. Sky News reporting live. Listen.
Originally, there were 20 shots heard by witnesses, understood to be 2 gunmen there who opened fire, one described as being young. We believe that one of them may well have explosives on him, and in the last few minutes or so, witnesses have heard explosions coming from inside that theatre. So that is an ongoing incident at the moment. But of course, there have been these episodes throughout Paris tonight as well. We heard at the Stade de France where this football match was going on between France and Germany, a friendly match. There was explosions heard there. We've heard those recorded by a viewer. Very loud, clearly shocked the crowd, and it has now been confirmed that there were 2 suicide attacks in Paris and a bombing near the stadium. 3 people killed there.
I think Gate
Now
J,
we're
they
getting more
mentioned.
word on the people who have been arrested. There is one man who has been arrested in Paris tonight, arrested by French authorities, who told French authorities, I am from ISIS. I now have further information. That suspect has just told French police within the last hour or so, I am Syrian. I was here with 2 others. We were recruited by ISIS, and this is, in essence, an ISIS mission. So what began some 3 or so hours ago now with a shooting and a series of explosions outside a stadium where the French president was in attendance,
see this coming?
and then spilled out into the streets and to the concert
Too
hall
bad
with the
nobody told
shooting,
him.
and then the hostage taking, and then the explosions. What began with all
like
of that
40 other channels.
has ended with one arrest. A man from Syria who says he is ISIS. He was recruited by ISIS. Quoting from inside the theater, according to witnesses, this is for Syria, Allahu Akbar. And the dawn of a new day in Europe. And a new normal in Paris.
This is just a probe.
Breaking
Just getting
now,
started.
just into us from Figaro in Paris, from a reputable news organization, 12 people rescued at the concert hall. 12 people have just been rescued. Mark Heiner Moore, just been rescued by police, and the raid continues now. This is precedent from earlier. This is what we're watching now is Sky News is doing its coverage, and we were watching their coverage, and they were replaying the president. We're not going to do that because we have breaking news, and that is that 12 people have just been rescued, according to journalists on scene, from this concert hall and taken to safety. We don't know their overall condition. Were they injured? We don't know, but we know that 12 more have been rescued at the same time we learn of the one arrest, repeating it for the last time, and then we're going to go to a live witness, a man who told police, I am Syrian, I'm here with 2 others, we were recruited by ISIS, and this is an ISIS operation. And if this is an ISIS operation, think what's happened in context. If what this man arrested said is the truth, here's what's happened. Yesterday, an assault began, an unprecedented assault, with Kurdish troops in the north of Syria, with United States air power, retaking a road which was a supply route between one area for ISIS and another area. The United States military said it is essential. If we're going to stop this, this road must be stopped. This transportation area must be removed. They dug huge ditches, put up pilings in between, made it so that that road and that passageway could not be used. Could not be used for supplies, could not be used for men, could not be used for ISIS to carry out its wave of attacks and caliphate across the north of Syria and Iraq and beyond. Couldn't be used anymore. That happened yesterday and today. The beginning of the attempt to stop ISIS with United States air cover and Kurdish troops on the ground. That was yesterday. Today, according to the man who just was arrested, ISIS has carried out an attack the likes of which we have never seen, the likes of which ISIS or any other terrorist organization has ever proved it could pull off. Not in the history of this world. Never has a terrorist organization in multiple locations in the middle of high alert in one of the most fortified areas with the highest security imaginable in Paris, where they were hit just in January, and has pulled off a multiple location attack where dozens are dead, hundreds are injured, and authorities are now storming.
Yeah, they've had the military
where
deployed
hostages were
throughout
taken
the
and they were
area
murdered
for
summarily
months
one
now.
by one. That has never happened.
Now
in
the borders of
history
the
this
nation
world.
are closed.
And we are now in the middle of a new normal. The borders of France are closed. The military are on the streets. The cabinet has met. And it is on lockdown. And for the first time since 1944, Paris is under curfew. For the first time since World War II, the City of Lights is shut down. Matthias Blemont is there now. He is a correspondent for Reuters. He is at the Place de République, which is right in the middle of all of this. Sir, what can you tell us?
Yes, good evening. I'm by one of the most busy squares of Paris in normal times, and this time the whole square has been totally shut down by police forces. We're just hearing every now and then police cars, civil security, and firemen trying to make their way to the 11th arrondissement, which is also one of the busiest areas of Paris on Friday evenings and Saturday evenings. People were at cafes, restaurants, and have been taken by surprise. And many civilians all around were reaching out to their phones to understand what was going on, trying to browse the internet, getting calls from family and
Matthias, excuse me. We have a Fox News alert now just into Fox News from the concert hall. And I'd like to report to you that police have just confirmed to Fox News the attack on the concert hall is over. 2 attackers were on scene. Both of the attackers have been killed. The carnage at the concert hall has ended, and no more people will die. That is from police in the past few seconds who were on scene. Think of what, Matthias, stay with us. Think of what had happened. The concert is underway. This group from the United States. The band is playing, the place is packed, and it is very loud, and shots start to fire. All of this from social media. And the police say people began to try to escape, and they were mowing them down one by one. Witnesses inside the concert hall said that they were on the 2nd floor and watching as they were killing first one person and then another and then another. Police cordoned off the outside, then 5 explosions, maybe 6 depending on your account, but multiple explosions, and the police stormed the concert hall. And when they stormed the concert hall, the authorities or someone was able to kill these 2 attackers. 2 young men, as they've been described to us, 2 young men without masks, one of them with a pump-action shotgun, shooting one person after another, one, according to social media, and others saying, this is for Syria, another saying, Allahu Akbar, and all of it is now over. 4 minutes before 1 a.m. in Paris, authorities have killed them both, or both have been killed, we can't know yet. And the carnage at the concert hall has ended. Continuing now with Matthias Blemont, who was right in the middle of it. I wanted to get that to our viewers. Continue if you would.
Well, I was just saying that the police, firemen, and civil security is about sweeping through the streets trying to get to the scene. I was just told by a police officer that we should all be careful because the terrorists were still in the streets where a few meters from where I'm standing now, and one of them was saying that it appears that the operation carried out by the terrorists was still ongoing. It appears, it's also obviously very early to draw to any conclusions, but it appears to be also a very symbolic attack at the Charlie Hebdo newspaper was is about 300 meters where I'm staying as well. So the whole scene now looks extremely chaotic. Policemen are trying to evacuate people, are closing the streets. You're probably hearing some alarms now flashing in front of me, and they seem to be very unsure what still is going on at the moment.
Well, I've just been able to get some more information about what was going on inside that concert hall, according to the authorities and others. The description is that initially, according to people who were there were initially 3 gunmen. The same description continues: young men, not masked, but wearing flak jackets and carrying Kalashnikovs, basically semi-automatic weapons. The words that I told you about what they were screaming remain, and one of them somehow was incapacitated during all of this. I don't know how that person was incapacitated or killed, but by the time authorities stormed the place, they were down to 2 of them. Young men carrying Kalashnikovs, wearing flak jackets, reloading repeatedly. And we still have this report of somebody with a pump shotgun action, which that's from earlier. Could that have been this 3rd person? I do not know. But I can tell you that the reports that we get will be varied, and lots of them will be inaccurate. But of this, we are confident at this hour. The attack at the concert hall is over. Police have regained control. And we have just gotten this from authorities on what it means that there is now a state of emergency across France. The borders are closed. The military is on the streets. And according to the French government, the state of emergency means that the state, meaning the authorities, can control the press in any way they want, and they can enter private homes at any time they want without a warrant. A state of emergency means that the state has taken complete control of the nation. The state has closed the borders. No French citizen or anyone else can enter or exit. No one. The military control the streets in every way. If they want to enter a home or an apartment or a business or a dwelling, they can. They want to close down the subway systems, which has largely happened over the last hour. They will. The state of emergency means the state is in complete control in Paris and across France tonight, because the authorities say they have no way to know whether there is more of this to come. The band involved reports it is currently trying to determine the safety and whereabouts of the band and crew. The Eagles of Death Metal report, our thoughts are with the people involved in this tragic situation during a state of emergency across the nation of France. It's 7 o'clock on the East Coast, 4 p.m. in the West Coast, 1 a.m. in Paris. I'm Shepard Smith in New York with continuing coverage of the terrorist attacks across Paris, which have left at least 40 people dead, at least 60 people injured, and the state of emergency which I just described. We expect to hear more from the French president. The French cabinet meeting, as far as we know, is ongoing, and we've been able to get a number of new reports in. I mentioned the French website, which explained what a state of emergency means there. Police at Bataclan say the attack is over, that they have killed 2 people. What happened with the rest, we have no way to know. The hostage taking has ended. At least 12 people have been rescued. So that is the good news of the night. We were getting word over the past hour, as this hostage situation was ongoing, that a number of people had escaped, or actually we didn't know. A number of people had exited from this concert hall. We didn't have any idea how that was possible. Now we know there were but 2 gunmen, at least, remaining by that point. And apparently, from all that we've heard, the 2 gunmen were not able to, between them, maintain complete control over the surroundings. But there were social media reports from inside the building at the time, from one man who was on the 2nd floor explaining, quoting, "It was carnage. He was still shaking after being freed from the hostage taking at the Bataclan. His name, Marc Coupry." He said, and I quote, "It looked like a battlefield. There was blood everywhere. There were bodies everywhere. I was at the far side of the hall when the shooting began. There seemed to be at least 2 gunmen. This all matches. They shot from the balcony. Everyone scrabbled to the ground," he writes. This is speaking to the Telegraph newspaper. "I was on the ground with a man on top of me and another one beside me up against a wall. We just stayed still like that. At first we kept quiet. I don't know how long we stayed like that. It seemed like an eternity," he said. "I saw my final unfurl before me. I thought it was the end. I thought, I'm finished. I was terrified. We must have all thought at the time. Eventually, we and a few came in slowly. We began to look up, and there was blood absolutely everywhere, and the police who got in told us to get out. That was before the 5 explosions took place. That was before the authorities stormed the building. And now we have that account. In addition, we got word from inside at the time from someone who was posting on his Facebook, I'm still at Bataclan, first floor, hurt bad. There are survivors inside. They are cutting down all the world one by one. First floor soon. Minutes later, his next post, alive, just cuts, carnage, dead bodies everywhere. That from more than an hour ago. There's been no more. John Kerry has just tweeted, our embassy in Paris is making every effort to account for the welfare of American citizens in the city. Among those Americans who were there, the members of the band that was playing at the time this concert hall attack happened. The Eagles of Death Metal from California, and their people saying they still don't know the situation with that band, where they are, or whether they're accounted for. And across the city, people trying to make their way to their apartments and their flats and their homes because much of the subway lines are shut down, the military on the street, the police in control, and the state of emergency with the borders closed, the president and his cabinet meeting. And unthinkable changes coming to Paris and France and Europe and the world. As New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio says, they are at high alert and have been at high alert. And the world waits to find out what happens next. I have mentioned throughout the night from multiple credible sources, multiple reputable news agencies are reporting that there are other scenes across Paris. We cannot confirm that. Frankly, we are not there. Not in large numbers, of course, not in the way the local media are. But we know from our own history, from being right here on the day that the terror attacks on our 9/11, of hearing the credible news agencies whom we've trusted all of our lives reporting with authority like any other day that there was another attack at the Supreme Court was one word. And we all believed it for a time until it could be proved to us that it was not true, because all of the media and all those reporting went to the spots where we knew something had happened. And it wasn't until at some point we could gather ourselves and say, no, that wasn't right. So we can only hope and pray at this hour that the reports from the agency French Press and others of 6 other sites where attacks had happened, we can only hope that those were not true. For now, that reporting continues from the French news agency. Now from Jerome Bowser, shivering in the cold night, wearing a white T-shirt splattered with blood of the victims of the wounded, he said, and I quote, the concert had started. I was in the audience and I heard what sounded like a firecracker. It was loud, but the gig was very loud. And I thought it was something that was part of the show. I think lots of people thought that. Then they started firing. I saw what I thought was at least 2 people. Then I fled. The exits were clearly marked and I just ran. There were wounded. There was a lot of blood everywhere. And the authorities are now inside that concert hall. That from another Bataclan witness. And Sky News reporting live now. Listen.
This is the moment we believe that those 2 terrorists, as we believe, or 2 gunmen had attacked the hostage inside. So this was heard on the streets a little earlier.
Moi, je peux que retransmettre des policiers Est-ce que vous avez tous entendu?
So we believe that may be the moment that the police moved in to that theatre. Peter, you were saying you know that theatre or the concert hall very well. How difficult would it have been for them to get access to get in there?
There were a lot of doors. It's a very famous old theatre. All of us who live in Paris go there from time to time to enjoy concerts. That's what it's always been associated with. Lots of doors, as all theatres, all venues like that have. But one would imagine that the terrorists would have locked all those doors, kept them shut. So I think it would have been pretty difficult, actually. And remember that the terrorists would have been among all these concert goers. The numbers I hear was around 100 inside, but I think it's probably more than that, actually, if there was a rock band playing, a relatively well-known rock band. So I think it would have been an idiot of sorts, massively difficult for the anti-terror officers concerned. And I think that the horror of it all will be reflected in the kind of carnage
that the authorities will be examining now.
Looks like they might have a sniper.
Situation.
Yeah, well, we've got this figure of 40 dead so far, but indications, of course, that may well rise now as they get into that theatre and establish exactly what's gone on there. Peter, for the moment, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's just speak once more to Rebecca, who's been monitoring all the various lines coming in from the agencies. And I thought part of their thinking may well be that we had this news from one of the earlier explosions at Stade de France, that may have been a suicide bomber.
That's what we believe. At the time we thought it was unconfirmed, but yes, it now seems like that is the case. But crucially, we now know, as you were saying there, that this incident at the Bataclan Theatre is over. The 2 gunmen inside have been killed, and we understand earlier that at least 15 people have been killed as well inside. That figure is likely to be much higher. As was mentioned a short while ago, it's been reported that inside the building, those 2 gunmen were tossing explosives at the people that were taken hostage, and we understand there were around 60 to 100
in a confined space.
In a very confined space. This was a rock concert going on, a number of youngsters there. But it's not the isolated incident. As you mentioned, there was this episode too close to the Stade de France, where this international football match was taking place against Germany earlier. We've heard the footage of explosions being heard inside the stadium. They were actually outside the stadium, we understand, by Gate J. And 3 people were killed. And then earlier on, this attack on this bar in the 10th district of Paris, we understand at least 11 people shot dead there. A gunman went on the loose with an automatic gun. And that was the first incident. Police were at the scene very quickly. A cordon was put up, but as you've been hearing, a state of emergency has now been declared in Paris. Francois Hollande has said the borders are shut to stop people leaving. It seems that this is a coordinated attack, a terrorist attack. It seems clear now.
I think these are actually live pictures that we're getting in. Alistair, that's significant. That's a military personnel there. That's perhaps part of the 200 military force that President Hollande was talking about moving into.
Well, it's not unusual to see police on the streets of Paris, armed soldiers on the streets of Paris, actually. I mean, it's something that we don't see in London at all, but in Paris it's relatively common. But yeah, it could be part of it's clearly part of a cordon. I don't know where
and we're told that there are checkpoints now being set up across Paris with the military monitoring them. I want to tell you that we've just gotten word from the United States government that relevant agencies, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, all offering assistance. An FBI statement is expected from headquarters shortly. The FBI New York field office has responsibility for France and connecting directly FBI attaché stations in Paris. I was mentioning earlier the band that was playing at the theater at the time, the Eagles of Death Metal. Their drummer has just reported to the Washington Post newspaper that all members of the band are accounted for and are uninjured. We do not have word on any of the other Americans there. We are told that a number of Americans were in attendance. In fact, it was described to me as a large American contingency. We don't know the condition of any others. The scene inside that concert hall has just been described to us as one of chaos and carnage, unthinkable in its scope. Kate Moody is a reporter for France 24. She is in northern Paris, not far from one of the attack sites. Her father is a vice president of news here. Kate, what can you tell us?
Hi, Shepard. Well, it's a scene of real panic across Paris this evening. People remembering, of course, those Charlie Hebdo attacks that rocked the city earlier this year in January that left 20 people dead. Security has been raised across the city and certainly across the country since then, but it was apparently unable to stop this very coordinated series of attacks that still seems to be unfolding here. We understand that the hostage situation at this theater has itself been resolved. Death toll, of course, is still far from confirmed, but there have been at least 7 different incidents reported across the city this evening. It's not yet clear if all of those have been resolved yet.
Kate, that has been an item of interest and concern here, and we've been as careful as we can be. But as you are, I'm reading from Agency French Press of multiple more locations of incidents happening, and I wonder if you can tell us with any assurity if there's truth to any of that.
Well, we do know that a couple of, what I can tell you is that there was, first of all, a series of explosions outside the Stade de France, that's the stadium where a soccer match was taking place this evening, where the French president was actually attending that game at the time. He was taken out as these incidents began being reported. There was a series of explosions there. There was a shooting outside a very popular Cambodian restaurant in a very busy part of town in the 10th arrondissement. And then not far from that, in the 11th arrondissement, was where this hostage situation was unfolding at the theater. We understand there's been at least one other shooting at a shopping mall in central Paris, also it's called Les Halles, the shopping center. And then there have been a few reports about, I believe, 3 other locations. I can't confirm that for you, but certainly the situation is far from being over in Paris this evening.
I can't even imagine, Kate, what it feels like there. I can only remember walking around sort of dazed and confused in the hours after the attacks that happened here. Is it similar, or how would you describe it?
It is certainly a similar feeling, and really it's a sense of fear because we just don't know what happens yet. We don't know what's over. We certainly don't have any idea of what the motive might be. You'll remember, of course, when the Charlie Hebdo attacks happened, that was a rather controversial magazine that had received threats from Islamist militants before. So immediately when that attack happened, there was sort of a sense that we might understand who might be behind that. If you're looking at the targets that we've seen this evening, a soccer stadium, a restaurant, a concert hall, it's not quite as easy to decipher who or what might be behind that. And that, of course, is adding to the sense of fear that we're feeling here in Paris.
Kate, thank you. I'm just getting word from police to the agency French Press. This word has come in the last minute or two that somewhere around 100 people have been killed inside the concert hall. It's being described to us as a scene of utter carnage, that when authorities went in, there were bodies and blood everywhere, that the 2 gunmen who remained inside, and in the end, we may find that there were but 2, but that they continued to shoot people one after another, that the reports from the balcony on Facebook, that the reports from people who had escaped the carnage in there and came out and talked to local journalists, that their reports were accurate, and that those 2 gunmen were killing people one after another, shouting, "This is for Syria," and Allahu Akbar. And the French press agency is now reporting, quoting police, that somewhere around 100 people have been killed inside that hall. Kate, I can't even, tonight, France is under lockdown, the military on the streets, the borders closed. You wonder what the days ahead bring. I want to thank Kate Moody, who joined us live. We've lost our connection with her. Continuing to watch feeds from multiple news networks, and it really doesn't matter what the details are henceforth. We can hope that what has happened is the end of this attack. We can but hope that for tonight at 1:15 Paris time, that it has all ended and that we will see no more tonight. But the damage is done and the world has changed for France, Europe, and the world. Quoting 2 police officials and say security forces have ended their assault on the concert hall filled with hostages, killing the 2 attackers. Neither official would be named, citing ongoing operations throughout the city. One official described, quote, carnage inside the building, saying the attackers had tossed explosives at the hostages. Both officials said they expected the death toll to rise. As the French press agency reports, around 100 people dead in the attack on the Paris concert venue. That would presumably bring the death toll to somewhere around 120, 130. We're getting live reports in from the scene, and authorities are moving the cordon back so that the police lines are being moved back further and further as the crime scene is expanding, as people are told to go to their homes, as word has been sent out on social media, on official French websites, that a state of emergency is in place, that the military now controls the streets, that authorities have authority now to enter people's homes without notice. And now some pictures coming into us from Sky News. Here, listen.
100 dead in the Bataclan concert hall. This was the scene where the police stormed that theatre earlier. We had the reports that between 60 and 100 were being held hostage in that concert hall. We then heard a series of explosions. Francois Hollande said that the police would move in an assault operation, but it now appears that there are about 100 dead in that theatre. That may well be that most of those people being held hostage were killed. Reports have suggested that as well as the 2 attackers there being armed, that they may have had explosives as well. Our defence correspondent, Alison Bunkle, is with us. I mean, Alison, we reflect.
That is the update as we reported just a moment ago. I want to continue to look at live pictures as I give you more witness statements that have just come into us. A witness named Samia, currently telling radio station France Info, they call it iFrance, but it's France Info, that she's shocked to see that many people are slowly coming out of the building, or were, either with their hands above their heads or on stretchers. She added that the bulk of them were very young, which she says makes it very sad to witness, quoting, "It felt like a film," said the woman in tears who was part of the group, quoting, "It was horrible. There were so many corpses. I can't talk about it," said a bearded man in a death metal t-shirt as he ran down the street from the Bataclan in shock. A woman in her 20s in a fur-collared coat had been drinking in a nearby bar when people fleeing the initial shooting at Bataclan ran into the bar. Quote, "They were panicked, wounded, screaming. Blood was running all over them. People were having panic attacks. It was horrible." Think of it, 1,000 people or so inside when all of this began. 1,000 people in this concert hall. Then the shootings. Some people escaped, as one witness put it, in the first wave. Many were gunned down right away. They were shooting from the balcony, according to witness reports. One after another shot and killed, shot and wounded. Some escaped in the early going in the first hour of this siege at the concert hall, escaped with blood on them, explaining what was going on inside. Authorities setting up a cordon on the outside, warning people to stand clear, keeping the media away, saying don't show live action, and then eventually the explosions, 5 of them. And then authorities stormed the place. And now we realize that as many as 100 or so, as it's been reported, are dead inside. We know very many escaped because we've heard from them, we've seen them. There were 1,000 initially, and now something like 100 dead. And authorities working to figure out exactly who were these people. And all we can know at this moment is what the witnesses say they saw and heard. And to a man and a woman, the witnesses say they screamed, "This is for Syria." And another, "Allahu Akbar, God is great." At the same time, we learned the Parisian Paris officials have arrested at least one person. Arrested one person who said, "I am Syrian. I was recruited," the next, "I was recruited by ISIS. I have come here with 2 others, and this is an ISIS operation." According to the one person that we know of arrested by Paris authorities, the one person told the authorities, "I am Syrian. I am from ISIS. I was recruited by ISIS. This is an ISIS operation." And if true, it's like nothing we've seen. I reported earlier that we had never seen a terrorist organization of this kind with multiple attacks in multiple places in a large city with high alert, authorities realizing they are at extreme risk of attack, and yet they were able to pull this off. This has not happened. Never happened. And Paris has never had a mandatory curfew, not since 1944 in World War II. Certainly the military on the streets and a state of emergency in effect. Nothing like this have we seen, and you can only wonder what the days ahead will bring. Breaking now, the UN Security Council has just condemned the, quote, "barbaric and cowardice terrorist attack in Paris." From Washington now, Reuters, Dateline, Washington, D.C. The U.S. Embassy in Paris is making every effort to account for the American citizens in the city following the series of attacks today, said the Secretary of State John Kerry. He said the United States stands ready to provide whatever support the French government may require. Kerry is in Vienna for the international talks on ways to end the war in Syria. At the same time, we've learned that the French President Francois Hollande has canceled his trip to the G20, and you wonder, will the G20 continue? As the French Parliament meets now to try to decide what to do going forward. For now, they have shut it down. Paris is shut down. Checkpoints in the streets. And French media and French police report somewhere around 100 dead in Bataclan and dozens killed in 2 other locations, with reports as verified by Kate Moody that there are other scenes of other carnage, whether connected so far we cannot know. This is the map of the location. The 3 different areas. You can see 2 close to each other, the other upriver. The Stade de France, that's the stadium where the explosions happened outside, where people inside heard one explosion after another. We could hear it, remember, on the replayed video from inside the stadium. A loud explosion. We now know it came from outside in a bar where a suicide bomber had been. Authorities now confirmed 2 suicide bombers. They confirmed another bomb at that location, and then at Bataclan, first the shootings, one after another, then the explosion, then the police moved in. Now the gunmen are reported to be dead inside Bataclan. More than 100 others reported to be dead there. And authorities now working to regain control of the situation on a city on edge. Early now, this Saturday morning. Schools are closed tomorrow, the state of emergency in place with no end in sight, and the borders of the country are now shut down. No one, French or otherwise, can enter or leave the country on the orders of the president and the meeting of the cabinet. As we believe now, if you believe the man who's been arrested, that ISIS has struck inside Paris in multiple places at the same time in a coordinated attack. Just as the United States military announced that it had shut down that road, the road between in the Raqqa region in the north of Syria, a transportation route, no doubt, but also a supply route and a place through which they were getting more supporters, more ISIS gunmen to come through and continue the war there. That supply line shut down with U.S. air support, and now the attack in Paris. Sky News continuing their coverage. Listen.
Atrocious, and as we have been hearing earlier, it does bring into question how can we defend a city, or how can one even prepare for such a threat as big as this? This is completely kamikaze, it's a complete catastrophe.
Facing the real
The
problem.
whole city is completely overwhelmed with
The ideology
emotion.
itself.
And looking and listening to what Francois Hollande said earlier about the state of emergency, borders being closed, I mean, will that make Paris or France feel any more secure tomorrow, or this morning, I should say?
Sorry, I needed a shirt.
The last time the state of emergency was launched was 10 years ago during the riots in Clichy-sous-Bois. This is a very rare phenomenon. If we're going to make France feel particularly safer, only time can really tell. I mean, at the moment, it's the most severe measures that Francois Hollande can take, and he's going to take all measures possible.
There is breaking news now on Fox News Channel. We've been speaking of other locations where we believed attacks had happened. According to French media, we now have video from La Halle. That is the French shopping center, famous shopping center, and video has now come in. Play it. We're seeing this together for the first time. This is not the scene of the kind of shooting that happened in cities, I presume, around the world on a given day. This is not an isolated shooting in a shopping mall. Of this we can be certain. There are multiple people with blood over them and citizens treating citizens on the street. Think of this. It happened in the wake of all the explosions and the carnage in other parts of the city. And now this from La Halle, a very famous shopping mall in Paris. So now we know, unless convinced otherwise by someone, that it was more than the 3 which began, that the French news agency, the official news agency, has been right all along in its reporting, that there were multiple other locations where the terrorists struck tonight. That has been the reporting of the French news agency for hours. And now this video from La Halle, the shopping center, where others, injured and wounded, are being carted away.
All right, that's a wrap, folks. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. We're going to be talking about this in the news, I'm sure.
One thing that cameras